Engineer mocked the black mechanic. "Fix this engine and I'll marry you." Then she did. The aerospace engineering lab hums with tension as Marcus Sterling, MIT graduate and chief propulsion engineer, stares at the revolutionary hybrid engine that could transform aviation forever. If anyone could figure out why it keeps failing after exactly 47 minutes of operation. Behind him, 23-year-old Zara Johnson wipes grease from her hands, her mechanical engineering degree from Howard University invisible beneath coveralls that mark her as just a mechanic in the eyes of colleagues who measure intelligence by skin color and job title. For 6 months, Marcus and his team of Ivy League engineers have thrown millions at this problem, their theoretical knowledge useless against an engine that defies every computer model and simulation. Today, his frustration will boil over into casual cruelty that exposes the racism underlying the aerospace industry's glass ceilings. But Zara's response will prove that brilliance doesn't require validation from people too prejudiced to recognize it when it challenges their assumptions about who deserves to innovate. Zara's workday begins at dawn in the hangar, where dreams of flight become metal and fire. Her tools arranged with precision that would impress surgeons but goes unnoticed by engineers who assume mechanical work requires muscle rather than mind. She earned her degree summa cum laude while working nights to pay tuition, her thesis on thermodynamic optimization dismissed by professors who couldn't believe innovative ideas came from someone who looked like her. The aerospace industry recruited her with promises of breaking barriers. But 3 years later, she's still relegated to hands-on work, while white colleagues with lesser credentials design the engines she's tasked with repairing when their theories fail to match reality. Her coveralls hide intellect that rivals any MIT graduate, but society's assumptions about who deserves to innovate keep her trapped in roles that waste her brilliant mind. The irony burns as she maintains engines designed by people who've never felt the heartbeat of machinery through their hands, who understand propulsion through equations, but miss the subtle vibrations that reveal mechanical truth. Her toolbox contains instruments she modified herself, improvements on standard designs that make her more efficient than colleagues with twice her experience. She reads technical manuals in 3 languages during breaks, stays current with cutting-edge research that her superiors discuss in meetings she's not invited to attend. Each night, she returns to an apartment filled with aerospace journals and prototype designs, her mind constantly working on problems that fascinate her despite employment that treats her like hired muscle rather than trained engineer. Marcus Sterling arrives each morning in his Tesla, the car's silent efficiency announcing his environmental consciousness, while his leadership perpetuates systems that waste human potential through systematic exclusion. Zara watches him stride past without acknowledgement, his expensive suit tailored to project authority he's never had to earn through adversity. He built his reputation on incremental improvements to existing designs, safe innovations that impress committees without challenging fundamental assumptions about how propulsion systems should work. His success depends on teams of people like Zara, whose practical knowledge corrects his theoretical mistakes. But credit flows upward while responsibility for failures trickles down to the people actually touching the machinery. The morning routines reveal stark contrasts in their approaches to problem solving. Marcus begins with computer simulations and mathematical models, approaching engines as abstract systems that should behave according to theoretical principles. Zara starts by listening, her hands finding problems that sensors miss, her intuition reading mechanical language that textbooks never taught. She notices patterns that data analysis overlooks, understands relationships between components that engineering software can't model. While Marcus's team generates reports and holds meetings about the engine's mysterious failures, Zara quietly documents observations that could solve their most expensive problem if anyone bothered to ask for her input rather than just her labor. Today's crisis escalates when a prototype engine fails during a critical test flight simulation, shutting down exactly 47 minutes into operation despite passing every pre-flight inspection. Marcus's team scrambles to analyze data, their frustration mounting as computer models provide no explanation for the consistent timing of system failures. Government contracts worth hundreds of millions hang in the balance. Deadlines approach with terrifying speed, and theoretical knowledge proves useless against mechanical reality that refuses to conform to academic expectations. Zara continues her assigned maintenance tasks while observing the panic that grips engineers who've never learned to listen to what machines actually say versus what theories predict they should say. Marcus's frustration reaches dangerous levels as his fourth consecutive test ends with the same inexplicable failure. Government inspectors are arriving tomorrow to evaluate progress that doesn't exist despite months of expensive theoretical analysis. His team of MIT and Stanford graduates scrambles around computer terminals, their advanced degrees useless against machinery that refuses to behave according to their elegant mathematical models. The engine's consistent 47-minute shutdown cycle makes no engineering sense. Temperatures remain stable, pressures stay within parameters, fuel flow continues optimally, yet something triggers systematic failure with clockwork precision that defies every diagnostic tool they possess. Careers built on academic achievement crumble when confronted with problems that require intuitive understanding rather than just computational analysis. Zara observes from her workstation as Marcus's voice rises with each failed hypothesis, his explanations becoming increasingly desperate as he searches for solutions in databases and research papers rather than listening to the engine itself. She's identified the problem weeks ago through careful observation, a harmonic resonance issue caused by the interaction between the new titanium alloy housing and the magnetic field fluctuations of the experimental power coupling system. The mathematics are complex but solvable, requiring adjustments that her mechanical engineering background prepared her to understand, but that her job description doesn't allow her to suggest. She's tried approaching junior engineers with her observations, but her insights disappear into hierarchies that assume innovation flows downward from management rather than upward from practical experience. The confrontation begins when Marcus notices Zara listening to his team's increasingly frantic discussions, her presence suddenly visible as his desperation overcomes his habitual blindness to support staff. "Is there something you need?" he asks, his tone carrying the irritation of someone unused to having his struggles witnessed by people he considers beneath his notice. Zara's response demonstrates courage earned through years of watching her ideas dismissed. "I've been observing the engine's behavior patterns, and I think I might understand why it's failing." Her words cut through the laboratory's tension like a blade, creating silence that feels dangerous as every MIT graduate in the room processes the audacity of a mechanic offering engineering solutions to problems they can't solve. Marcus's reaction reveals everything toxic about how the aerospace industry perpetuates inequality through assumptions about who deserves to innovate. "You think you understand something that my team of PhD engineers can't figure out." His laughter carries the cruel edge of someone whose identity depends on maintaining hierarchies that validate his position. "Listen, I appreciate your enthusiasm, but engine analysis requires years of advanced theoretical training, not just knowing which end of a wrench to hold." His words create nervous chuckles from his team, their complicity in his casual racism making them equal participants in systems that waste talent through systematic exclusion. The dismissal stings not because Zara needs his validation, but because it represents millions of brilliant minds silenced by prejudice disguised as meritocracy. But Marcus's arrogance pushes beyond mere dismissal into territory that will define both their futures. "Tell you what, if you can fix this engine that stumped the best minds in aerospace engineering, I'll marry you. Hell, I'll tattoo your name on my forehead and call you genius for the rest of my life." His mock proposal draws more laughter from colleagues who mistake cruelty for humor. their privileged backgrounds protecting them from understanding how such statements wound people whose competence is constantly questioned. The challenge hangs in the air like a gauntlet thrown down by someone confident that his assumptions about intelligence and ability are naturally correct, that theoretical knowledge automatically trumps practical understanding, that skin color and job title determine who deserves to be taken seriously when innovation requires breakthrough thinking. Zara's response will shatter every assumption underlying Marcus's worldview. Fine. Give me access to the engine bay for 2 hours, and I'll not only fix your problem, I'll explain exactly why your computer models couldn't predict it. Her calm acceptance of his ridiculous challenge creates a moment of recognition among everyone present. They've underestimated someone whose quiet competence has been invisible to their prejudice, whose mechanical engineering degree has been dismissed because it came from an HBCU rather than an Ivy League institution, whose brilliance has been hidden behind coveralls and assumptions about who gets to innovate in America's most exclusive industries. Marcus realizes too late that his casual cruelty may have just been accepted by someone capable of exposing his incompetence to the very government inspectors whose approval determines his career's future. The laboratory falls silent as Zara approaches the experimental engine, her movements carrying the confidence of someone who has studied this machine's behavior for months, while others focused on computer screens instead of mechanical reality. Marcus and his team gather around like spectators at an execution, their skepticism mixed with nervous anticipation as they realize their careers depend on whether the woman they've dismissed can accomplish what their combined expertise has failed to achieve. Government inspectors will arrive in hours, demanding explanations for delays that have cost taxpayers millions while producing no results. If Zara fails, she provides convenient scapegoat for systemic incompetence. If she succeeds, everything they believe about merit and intelligence will require painful recalibration that privilege rarely demands from itself. Zara begins with diagnostic techniques that Harvard Business School never taught. She places her hands on the engine housing, feeling for vibrations that instruments can't detect, listening to harmonic frequencies that reveal structural relationships invisible to computer analysis. Her fingers trace mounting points and coupling connections, reading mechanical language through touch, while Marcus's team watches with the fascination of people observing witchcraft rather than recognizing superior methodology. The problem isn't in your fuel systems or electronic controls, she explains while working. It's harmonic resonance between the titanium housing and the magnetic field fluctuations from your power coupling. The timing is consistent because harmonic frequencies are mathematically predictable once you understand the resonance patterns. Marcus's response reveals how deeply his identity depends on maintaining assumptions about who deserves recognition as intelligent. Harmonic resonance? That's graduate-level acoustical engineering theory. You can't just throw around technical terms and pretend. His protest dies as Zara produces detailed calculation from her pocket notebook. Mathematics elegant enough to impress MIT professors. Solutions so obvious in retrospect that his team's failure to identify them becomes embarrassing rather than merely puzzling. Her numbers tell the story of systematic engineering failure disguised as theoretical sophistication, revealing how academic prestige can blind people to practical solutions that require listening to machinery rather than just modeling it mathematically. The actual repair process demonstrates expertise that years of hands-on experience develop, but academic training rarely provides. Zara doesn't just understand the theoretical relationships between components. She knows how to modify them efficiently, how to adjust mounting configurations that reduce harmonic interference, how to recalibrate magnetic field parameters that eliminate resonance cycles. Her tools move with surgical precision as she implements solutions that require both engineering knowledge and mechanical intuition, both theoretical understanding and practical skill. You need damping inserts at these 3 mounting points, she explains while installing modifications, and the magnetic field generator needs phase adjustment of exactly 12 degrees to interrupt the resonance cycle. Simple fix once you understand what you're actually dealing with. As Zara completes her modifications, the engine begins its startup sequence while everyone holds their breath, decades of careers hanging in the balance of one young woman's theoretical analysis and practical implementation. The first few minutes pass without incident, matching dozens of previous tests that had provided false hope before inevitable failure. But as the critical 47-minute mark approaches, the engine continues running smoothly, its operation stabilized by modifications that cost less than 1 day's worth of computer modeling expenses. 50 minutes, 60 minutes, 90 minutes of perfect operation that proves Zara's analysis correct, while simultaneously revealing the inadequacy of theoretical approaches that ignore practical understanding of how machines actually behave in real-world conditions. Marcus watches the engine run flawlessly beyond its previous failure point, his worldview cracking like ice under spring sun as he processes implications that threaten everything he's believed about intelligence, merit, and who deserves recognition in fields that shape the future. The woman he dismissed as just a mechanic has solved problems that stumped teams of PhD engineers, her solutions elegant in their simplicity and devastating in their effectiveness. His mock marriage proposal suddenly feels like prophecy rather than cruelty, his casual racism exposed as willful blindness to talent that existed in plain sight while he celebrated his own theoretical sophistication. The engine continues running perfectly, its smooth operation providing soundtrack to the most expensive education Marcus has ever received about the difference between credentials and competence, between assumptions and reality, between prejudice and recognition of actual brilliance wherever it appears. The silence that follows the engine's continued perfect operation stretches like a chasm between Marcus's assumptions and undeniable reality. His team of PhD engineers staring at instruments that confirm what their prejudice had declared impossible. The mechanic they dismissed has accomplished what months of their theoretical analysis couldn't achieve. Marcus's face cycles through emotions too complex for someone whose worldview depended on maintaining hierarchies that place credentials above competence, social position above actual intelligence, inherited advantage above earned expertise. Zara continues monitoring the engine's parameters with professional calm, her success creating not triumph, but simply the satisfaction of problems solved through proper analysis rather than academic theatrics that mistake complexity for sophistication. The government inspectors arrive early, drawn by reports of breakthrough progress on a project that had been hemorrhaging taxpayer money while producing no results. Their surprise at finding the engine running flawlessly after months of expensive failures becomes secondary to their shock at learning the solution came from someone the project's leadership had relegated to maintenance work despite her advanced engineering degree. Ms. Johnson, lead inspector Patricia Reeves, says after reviewing Zara's modification documentation, "Your analysis is brilliant and your implementation is flawless. Why weren't you part of the engineering team from the beginning?" The question hangs in the air like an accusation against systems that waste talent through systematic exclusion, revealing organizational failures that go far beyond technical incompetence. Marcus finds himself forced to acknowledge realities that his privilege had allowed him to ignore. Zara's mechanical engineering degree from Howard University, her research publications on propulsion systems, her patents on engine modifications that his company has been using without crediting their actual inventor. Each revelation makes his previous dismissal more embarrassing and his mock marriage proposal more prophetic. The casual racism of his challenge, now exposed as willful blindness to expertise that existed in plain sight. I didn't know," he stammers, but the excuse rings hollow even to himself. He hadn't known because he hadn't bothered to look, hadn't considered that brilliance might exist in forms that challenged his assumptions about who deserves recognition in fields he considered his domain. Zara's response demonstrates grace under pressure that years of facing systematic dismissal have taught her to maintain. You didn't know because you never asked. For 3 years, I've watched this team struggle with problems I could have solved, but my job description apparently doesn't include thinking, just fixing things after other people's theories fail. Her words cut deeper than any accusation, revealing how casual assumptions about competence based on appearance and position waste resources while perpetuating inequalities that damage both individual careers and institutional effectiveness. The government inspectors exchange glances that suggest Marcus's leadership approach has created liability that extends far beyond this single project failure. The transformation that follows happens with the speed that crisis often demands when comfortable assumptions prove catastrophically wrong. Zara receives immediate promotion to lead propulsion engineer, her salary adjusted to reflect her actual value rather than systemic devaluation of her contributions. But more importantly, her success forces institutional changes that address the exclusionary practices that had wasted her expertise while rewarding incompetence dressed in Ivy League credentials. Marcus's career survives, but his authority is permanently diminished by revelations about his judgment, his leadership style, and his inability to recognize talent that didn't match his prejudiced expectations about who deserves to innovate in American aerospace. The marriage proposal that Marcus intended as cruel mockery becomes a running joke throughout the aerospace industry, but not in ways he expected. Zara's brilliance makes his previous arrogance legendary for all the wrong reasons. His dismissive challenge now cited as example of how casual racism blinds organizations to their own human resources. Marcus Sterling's marriage proposal becomes shorthand for the kind of institutional blindness that wastes talent through systematic exclusion, a cautionary tale about assuming competence correlates with credentials rather than actual results. Zara graciously declines his awkward attempts to make the joke reality, but accepts his genuine apologies and commitment to institutional changes that could prevent other brilliant minds from being dismissed because they don't fit prejudiced assumptions about who gets to innovate when breakthrough thinking requires recognizing excellence wherever it appears. 6 months later, Zara leads the propulsion engineering division of a company transformed by her success and the institutional changes her breakthrough demanded. The aerospace industry, notorious for its exclusionary practices, begins grudgingly acknowledging that innovation requires diverse perspectives rather than just expensive credentials from elite institutions. Marcus works under her leadership, his theoretical knowledge finally directed by practical understanding that bridges the gap between academic models and mechanical reality. Their partnership demonstrates what becomes possible when organizations prioritize results over assumptions, competence over comfort, breakthrough thinking over institutional bias that mistakes familiar for qualified. The engine that nearly destroyed Marcus's career now powers the most successful aircraft in the company's history. Its revolutionary design earning recognition that transforms both Zara's professional standing and industry practices that had systematically excluded voices like hers. She speaks at engineering conferences about technical innovation, at diversity symposiums about systemic barriers, and at universities about the difference between education and intelligence, between credentials and competence. Her success story becomes template for organizational change that recognizes talent regardless of its packaging, that values results over assumptions, that understands brilliance doesn't announce itself through traditional channels, when those channels exclude people based on characteristics unrelated to intellectual capability. Marcus's journey from casual racist to genuine ally illustrates the personal growth that institutional change requires when organizations choose justice over just maintaining comfortable hierarchies. He advocates publicly for inclusive hiring practices, mentors young engineers from underrepresented backgrounds, and uses his platform to challenge assumptions that had blinded him to excellence existing in forms he hadn't expected. His transformation from antagonist to supporter demonstrates that redemption is possible when people choose growth over defending prejudices that damage both individual careers and institutional effectiveness. The marriage proposal that began as mockery becomes symbol of possibilities that emerge when barriers dissolve and brilliance finds recognition regardless of social expectations about who deserves to innovate. Their professional relationship evolves into mutual respect built on shared commitment to excellence rather than hierarchies based on assumptions about merit and intelligence. Zara's leadership transforms not just technical approaches, but organizational culture, creating environments where innovation thrives through diversity rather than despite it. Marcus learns that his theoretical knowledge becomes more powerful when combined with perspectives that his privilege had prevented him from accessing. That breakthrough thinking requires challenging comfortable assumptions rather than just celebrating familiar excellence. Together, they represent possibilities for American industry when talent finds recognition wherever it exists, when competence determines authority, when innovation serves justice as well as profit. The company's success under Zara's technical leadership demonstrates that inclusive practices aren't just morally correct, but practically necessary for organizations competing in fields that require breakthrough thinking rather than just incremental improvements to existing approaches. Her innovations have revolutionized propulsion systems, created competitive advantages that translate into billions in government contracts, and established the company as industry leader in technologies that will define aviation's future. The woman Marcus dismissed as just a mechanic now holds patents that competitors spend fortunes trying to replicate, her insights driving innovations that transform how aircraft fly and how engineers approach problems that seemed intractable when analyzed through traditional methods that mistake complexity for sophistication. As Zara reviews proposals for the next generation of aerospace technologies, Marcus sits in meetings where his former colleagues acknowledge that his greatest professional achievement was being forced to recognize her brilliance before his prejudice could waste it entirely. The marriage proposal that meant to humiliate has become legend of transformation. Not romantic comedy, but serious story about what becomes possible when organizations choose competence over comfort, when individuals choose growth over maintaining assumptions that limit their access to excellence, when innovation serves justice by recognizing brilliance wherever it appears, rather than just celebrating it when it conforms to familiar patterns. Their partnership proves that breakthrough thinking requires breaking down barriers that waste human potential through systematic exclusion, that true innovation demands inclusive practices that value results over assumptions about who deserves opportunities to change the world. If this story moved you, maybe it's time to examine your own assumptions about competence and intelligence, to look for brilliance that might be hiding behind job titles, appearances, or credentials you've been taught to dismiss. If it is, start recognizing